you for being here this morning on what I feel is a very exciting day because I'm going to be sharing with you my action plan for a thriving Hamilton. Folks know me here in our city because my story is our city. I was raised in Stony Creek. I'm a lifelong Hamiltonian. My dad was an auto worker. My mom raised 4 kids in Stony Creek, and I've really never left our city. I went to Cardinal Newman High School. I worked in a particular factory, as well as serving tables to make my way through university. Went to our hometown university, McMaster. And of course, the people of this city have been my bedrock and my inspiration throughout not only my political career, but really my entire life. Folks will know that in 1997, I was first elected to City Council for Ward 2 and was into my 3rd term when a by-election gave me the opportunity to serve the public, the people of Hamilton in a different capacity. I was elected to the Ontario Legislature in 2004, initially in Hamilton East. When riding boundaries changed, it became Hamilton Centre, and I've served there until, of course, just a little while ago. I want to say that I think all of those things have led me to where I am today. That is the opportunity, the ability to put my name forward to run as mayor of this great city of ours, this city that I absolutely love. And you know what? There's a lot to do. There's a lot to do in this city. There's a lot of things that need to be undertaken to make sure that our city is a city that's able to thrive. And I think together we can absolutely make that happen. It's a matter of bringing the experience that I've gained over the years, the insights that I have, the track record in public life, the deep roots that I have in Hamilton, and all of these things will help me working together with so many others to not only tackle the challenges that Hamilton faces, but to realize the fantastic future that we all have, the vibrant future that's ahead of us. Together, I think we can very much ensure that this city is going to thrive because it is a great place to live and it will always be a great place to call home. So today you've seen my action plan for a thriving Hamilton. It's an action plan that's actually been informed by a lot of conversations and discussions that I've had over the last number of weeks with so many Hamiltonians, and I'm grateful for those discussions, those ideas, and those recommendations. Inside that plan, it shows the kinds of things that I want to accomplish in the next couple of years and how we can achieve those very goals. And those goals include making Hamilton a great place to live. And so the action plan talks about housing affordability and availability, both for renters and for people who pay a mortgage and own their own homes. About fixing the basics to ensure that people have a great home here. Things like our sewer and water issues, infrastructure, things like making sure that our roads are in good shape and are safe for people. Increasing transparency and engagement at City Hall is another huge issue that has come up, and I believe that we have a plan in here that will help us do exactly that. We want to make sure that Hamiltonians are once again able to trust their city hall, or elected politicians at the local level, and that's something I'm committed to ensure happens. Another goal is to make sure that Hamilton is a great place to work and a great place to prosper. What we need is to continue to diversify our economy here in this city, creating good jobs, well-paying jobs, jobs that you can raise a family on. And I will never stop making sure that that happens, as well as making sure that people can get around this city as easily and as cost-effectively as possible. I'll never stop expanding things like our public transit system and making sure that it's just easier for people to connect to each other and all parts of the city going forward. Also, another goal, a great place to raise a family, a great place to grow old. We've got wonderful, wonderful people in this city, and we need to make sure that we are making a community that is safe for everyone. And so when I say safe, I'm talking about things like safe to walk, safe to bike, safe to drive in our city. Making sure we're investing in initiatives and projects that are focused on ensuring that we're practicing extremely forward environmental stewardship in everything that we do, ensuring that the climate crisis, the climate emergency that is upon us is well addressed at every turn. Also making sure that Hamilton is a clean, welcoming, safe city for everyone who calls this place home and everyone who comes to visit. I want to say that it's been a really great pleasure and a great privilege to have been able to serve the people of this city for so many years already. And I really do have a lot of gratitude for the people of Hamilton. It's pretty much been my whole life that I've served here. It's been my whole career, and whether that is, as I've mentioned, the elected roles that I've had, but of course prior to that, I was working at the legal clinic in the East End. I've worked on housing, social housing issues. I've worked on all kinds of different social justice issues with so many community groups and people in our city, whether it was, being a city councillor, serving as an MPP, or just spending time here in our city, supporting our businesses and other folks. Absolutely, it's been a pleasure and an honor. And I can tell you that my heart and soul has always been here and always will be. For me, home has always been Hamilton, and it always will be. I love the city, as you probably all know. And so this action plan that I'm putting forward today is one that I believe will make Hamilton, will continue to make Hamilton, will improve on Hamilton's ability to be a great place to live, a great place to thrive, a great place to raise a family, a great place to work and prosper, and a great place to grow old. And so you'll see details of this plan as you go through it. It is something I'm very proud of because it's not just from me. It's from the conversations and discussions I've had with Hamiltonians over the last several weeks. Thanks, everybody. I'll take questions.
I'll start if everyone.
Sure, Debbie.
Andrea, you placed quite a bit of emphasis on housing, I think, in your action plan. One thing that's missing in there that I don't see, as you well know, we've had this crisis of people living in tents, for decades, but more pronounced certainly during the pandemic. One of the public debates that we've had in Hamilton is whether we need to enforce the bylaw, the anti-camping bylaw to start with, but then City Council went ahead and expedited the enforcement of the bylaw. And I think you'll probably find there's a lot of tensions between, some neighbors and
Sure.
people who don't want to see people uprooted from their tents, maybe to wander around the city and just find another place.
Sure.
What is your position on that issue of enforcement of people living in tents and along trails and parks?
Well, I think that it's very, very clear that the homelessness crisis that we have and the situation where people are left to live rough, whether that's in a park, whether that's on a trail, whether that's in the doorway of a building that's not being utilized otherwise, is really a symptom of a bigger problem. And I think that it's our obligation and our requirement as a city to work very, very hard to make sure that people have what they need to be able to live. I believe that housing is a right. I've always believed that. And what we need to do is find the pathways forward to give people an opportunity to have safe shelter that is adequate for them and that provides the supports necessary to keep them sheltered, and that we don't have that right now. So I don't believe the solution is one that's a Band-Aid like what we've been doing thus far. I think we have to really get serious about providing the kinds of shelter opportunities and supports necessary to keep people housed.
Yes, thank you. As a follow-up, so what about the core of the question, of course, is would you support this bylaw enforcement? Would you advocates are saying, don't uproot people, it's just gonna make it worse. So,
Well,
let
I don't,
them stay.
thanks, Tevye.
Basically.
I don't believe we should be uprooting people without giving them a place to go. I think that's the nub of the issue. I don't think that uprooting people and moving them to another space is solving any problem whatsoever. So if we're going to be doing that work proactively to move people out of parks, then we should be moving them to a place where they have some security and a roof over their head.
Next question.
So, you want to expand on transit, food service. What about, what do you want to do with area rating? Will you support it or eliminate it?
Here's what I found on the web.
Oh, so now I'll take that answer. Will you, though? Thanks, Kevin. So I absolutely believe that we need to expand access to transit in areas that are not getting transit right now. And in fact, when I go to places like the Flamborough Chamber of Commerce, for example, what they tell me is, I need a bus. What I hear from a lot of these communities is they need transit to be accessible to their small business districts. Why? Because there's not a population base that provides the workforce they need to staff up their businesses, particularly entry-level jobs where people are not earning enough money to own, operate, pay insurance and gas for a car. I mean, people just can't afford that. But then there's no other solution. And so it's really tough for employers to find working folks. And of course, there's working folks who would love to be able to take some of those jobs, but they have no way of getting there. So when it comes to area rating, I really believe that we need to provide the transit that justifies then the changes.
Do you have a follow-up, Kevin?
That would mean you would keep area rating and allow the individual areas to pay for it?
What I would commit to, and what I am committing to, is that any changes to area rating happen in tandem with improved services.
Next question.
Your plan cites an interest in making the city safe for pedestrians, cyclists, and drivers. Well, can you tell us exactly how you'll make that happen?
Well, it's already something that the city has been working on. So I don't expect to go in and completely upset the apple cart. I think we have to be respectful of the initiatives and the progress that's already being made. I can tell you that when I was a city councillor here in Hamilton many years ago, it was my initiative that brought the two-way street conversions to Hamilton. That was something that I took leadership on. McNabb Street North, which I was just remembering as I was walking around there during the Labor Day festivities, McNabb Street North was the first conversion to two-way traffic. And what that does is it slows traffic down and it creates a better environment for walking. But that was only the beginning. We then started making changes to sidewalks, making changes to things like bump outs, creating opportunities for pedestrians to be much safer. And I'm thrilled now that we've taken so many strides already in making sure cyclists are also getting attention and having those dedicated lanes to keep them safe. We just have to keep pushing on that work. I don't think that work will be done anytime soon, but what we have to do is make sure that we don't let it fall off the agenda. People deserve to be able to walk in their neighborhoods, to be able to walk in the business districts, to be able to walk to arts and cultural activities, to be able to make sure that, to be able to know that if their kids are going to the park, that they're going to be able to get there safely. And we always have to stay laser focused on those kinds of initiatives.
Do you have a follow-up? Okay. Next question.
How would you tackle the roads deficit and bring the standard of the city streets up to a higher level?
Yeah, I've heard a lot about the shape of our roads, and it's frustrating. There's no doubt that we want to see, multimodal modes of transportation being encouraged, and so absolutely we want people on transit. We want folks able to cycle. We want to make sure those networks are as robust as we possibly can make them. Each and every year, making improvements. But the bottom line is people still drive cars, and they're going to be driving cars for the foreseeable future, even as hopefully some of those vehicles will become EV vehicles, electric vehicles, and of course we need to be building the infrastructure to enable that to happen, but those vehicles are still also going to be on the roads. And so I think it's really important to build into the capital budget process the necessity of fixing our infrastructure in a way that people can see the results. You know, I had an experience the other day. I met with some women talking about, you know, just things that were on their, what's on your mind as a mom, as a woman. And a woman at this little conversation told me a story about a park that was just built, literally just opened this past summer in her ward. And the park is completely inaccessible. There's a concrete area and a drop about 6 inches so that her child, who's in a wheelchair, can't access the park. And when she went to buy her home, it was described as a great place to live because this brand new park was opening. And yet, here we are. We have a disability committee. I don't know why we would be building parks that are not accessible for children in wheelchairs and accessible for all people. That's a problem. So it's not just a matter of the infrastructure. It's a matter of the quality of the infrastructure. It's not a matter of just contracting out the services. It's a matter of determining who are the best providers of the building, the infrastructure building that we want to see done in the city. And this particular story is not something that Hamiltonians should have to put up with.
Why do you think that is happening? Is there?
Well, I'm going to find out why that's happening because it's not acceptable. So is it the quality of the contractor? I don't know. Is it the design that was put in place? I don't know what the answer is to the question, but I know it's a problem. And the obligation of the mayor and the council is to make sure that these problems are addressed because there's nothing that irks people more than knowing that their property tax dollars are being invested in a way that isn't providing the quality that they deserve.
Next question?
So for staffing of your office, how are you looking at allocating your staff and what are going to be the priorities, and are any of them going to be dedicated to specific issues?
That's a really great question, Joey, and at this point, I honestly don't even know how many staff are in the mayor's office. I don't even know that, but it is really important, and I'm glad you raised it, because it's not just the mayor's office and the mayor's staff. It's the city councillors. It's making sure that city councillors are engaged in the vision that I've put forward, but also feel that their passions and their desires and the desires that they bring from their constituents in their wards are also respected. It also means the larger city bureaucracy needs to be engaged. I've heard a lot of troubling things about a sense of disengagement, a lack of maybe collaboration, a lack of a problem-solving approach, and that creates a lot of friction, both between councillors and staff, among staff in some cases. That's why I talk about a recruitment and retention plan, because people want to work day in and day out. They want to go to work in an environment that they feel proud of, right? And being able to do a job that they can take some pride in. And I'm not sure that's happening right now. So being serious about a human resources look at what's happening. I'm hearing stories of departments that are severely understaffed, people literally being poached by other cities, some of our professionals in the various departments. Those things are not good for Hamilton. And so we have to figure out why that's happening and how do we put together a recruitment and retention strategy that builds a strong organization that people are proud to work at, that will help us reach our goals.
Follow-up, Julie?
I'll have a transit question on the next round. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll do a quick run through once more, and then if you have any additional questions, we'll check later. Tevya, you're first? Sorry, no. Was it Tevya? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Andrew, your plan talks about creating a new department, I think was to
Yeah.
expedite and
Yeah.
see through, I think, housing approvals basically, or development.
Mhm.
Creating a new department, I think, would come with a bill of tens of millions of dollars. I don't know, the largest department is well up there. Do you have a plan to pay for that?
Well, in fact, what I would be doing is taking some of the resources that are scattered throughout existing departments and moving them into a focused group. So it doesn't necessarily mean building a new department from scratch. What it does mean, though, is putting the talent that's necessary to move forward on housing, because it's the #1 priority in Hamilton. It's the #1 priority. We have to treat it that way. And we do that by creating a focus of a multidisciplinary group that's pulled from the various departments that are involved in the approvals process. I have to say, I heard from not-for-profit providers of housing. I heard from private developers. I heard from businesses. I've heard from, literally, on Labor Day, I heard from a union that was trying to build extra space for a new leg of their apprenticeship program, and they can't get their approvals. They can't get their permits. I went to a farm, and a farmer who was doing some really cool things in terms of the family farm and you know, changing what they're doing into something that's very forward-thinking, very environmentally friendly. They can't move forward. And people are waiting not months, but years to get these things approved and done. How can that be? We need to not only be building housing, but we need to be, you know, creating jobs in our city so people can have great work that feeds their families. None of these things can be done if the approvals processes are so lengthy and so frustrating and so costly that, you know, that years go by and there's no action. So I don't necessarily believe it's a matter of hiring a whole new group of people and creating a whole new structure. I believe it's about making sure that the people necessary to move these projects forward and focus on them, because they're the priority, jobs and housing. I believe we can do that. I firmly do.
You and your fellow NDP colleagues in your recent past life made some statements about the urban boundary. I think basically you were supportive of council's decision to keep, or maybe even before the decision was made, to keep it firm,
Absolutely.
right?
Mm-hmm.
You've left that unaddressed in your action plan. I'm just wondering if
Oh.
you wanted to address that.
Oh, I absolutely believe the urban boundary needs to be firm, but I also believe that what we were just talking about, the things that are frustrating, preventing the housing from being built, puts more pressure on this argument about urban boundary expansion. And I think if we do the right things to get the housing built within the urban boundary, then the pressure for expansion of the urban boundary will be reduced. But I am firmly in agreement that the urban boundary needs to be in place. I just assumed everybody knew it, so, but it's a good call. It's a good catch, actually. I guess you can't assume, but absolutely, a firm urban boundary. There's not only a lot of work that can be done in terms of conversions, and we know the city has a robust plan already in terms of how to meet the missing middle, how to have opportunities for people to add units to their existing houses, helping seniors, for example, to be able to stay in their home if they can put a little apartment in the basement, which would help with the rent and, you know, provide some company. Those things are really important pieces. But we also know that there's a lot of undeveloped land within the urban boundary, and there's a lot of opportunity that's coming, of course, with the LRT. We just have to make sure that we're not just building units, we're actually building communities. And for me, that's important. It's not just a number, how many units we're going to have at any given time. It has to be about always keeping our eye on the fact that Hamilton's a strong city with great neighborhoods, and we have to make sure that they stay that way.
Kevin?
So Hamilton is facing a preliminary 6.9% tax increase plus water rate increase around 4.6%. So how do you, and a lot of that money is for unfunded liabilities like COVID expenses and that sort of thing. So how will you be able to do what you want to do, which will, I assume, be expensive, and also keep taxes low?
It's a good question, Kevin, and it's all about priorities. And so even just what I was talking about now, imagine how much more revenue would come if we had, you know, more businesses able to operate in Hamilton, one of the big problems we have in our city is, of course, is the lack of balance between the industrial tax base and the residential tax base. As our industrial tax base shrunk, the burden shifted onto the residential tax base, and so we need to rebalance that. The way you do that is by some of the great projects that we see kind of on the horizon. So whether that's the Stelco lands with Slate, whether that's the McMaster Innovation Park, which includes the the support of small and medium-sized businesses in their growth, whether it's about making sure that we're seizing the opportunity when it comes to green jobs and the environment. All of those things will help us to grow the tax base that's commercial industrial, which then provides the revenues that doesn't require us to go always to the increases on the residential. Having said that, all budget processes, and I know this well, are about priorities, and it really is about priorities. And I think that Hamiltonians have very clearly identified that housing is a big priority, and it's one that I'm going to be focusing on. I also know that the budget process will be upon us immediately upon the end of the election. So if I have the honor of serving as the mayor of this city, we'll be rolling up our sleeves right away, because the other thing I think we need to keep in mind is that it's tough times for people, right? With inflation the way it is, cost of everything going through the roof, families need affordability as well. So we're going to have to balance those priorities as well as those needs, while always keeping in mind that people are facing really rising costs in a way they haven't in a long time.
So during the 2008 election, Fred, he talked about trying to rectify that balance between residential and industrial. So 70 to 30% at that time. Now it's 80-20. And yet, during that immediate time, you had Canada Bread, you had Amazon, you had all the Sierra, you had Mac Innovation Park. I mean, that and the ratio has not changed one bit. $1 billion in building permits does not make a dent in the ratio. I mean, how can you try to adjust that?
Well, again, I hear what you're saying in terms of the last couple of years, but the way that the process unfolds in terms of MPAC and in terms of the rates, not only in terms of how they're connected to the budgeting process, but also in terms of implementation. Those are things that we have to look seriously at, and I don't think that that we can kind of walk away from the fact that that's exactly how we get it done. We will. Other people will say, and they have to me, well, the prices of housing are up. I mean, there's so much extra money, but we all know that that's not how it works, right? That there's a process involved in terms of MPAC and in terms of the rate setting and usually the process of making the change over time. It's never like that. So all of those things. So there are constraints for sure, but I believe firmly that we have to keep doing exactly that. And I think that the other thing we will see is that residential burden spread over more units as we see the LRT and the investment that comes along the tracks, as well as some of the other housing investments that we're going to see as well. So it's not just the ratio, it's also who is carrying the burden of that 80%, for example, how many households.
Michael?
You were citing transparency at the city as a priority. In what ways has the city failed to be transparent over the last 3 years?
You want me to really say it? Sewergate, for example, Red Hill Creek Expressway, these things really create a sense of distrust. And I think that's what people are grappling with. How can our city not be upfront about things that really impact or could impact our health and well-being? So how is it that Cootes Paradise was poisoned with sewage, and it took a significant amount of time that the council knew about this, but didn't let people know. Well, people were canoeing and kayaking and fishing and doing all those things in Cootes Paradise. Not dissimilarly with the roadway. People lost their lives. There were some serious accidents that occurred. We need to be really upfront with folks when it comes to their health and safety and well-being. And I think that that's a bare minimum when it comes to transparency. So I get it, that you might have lawyers saying, there's risk here, there's risk there. But what about the risk to people's well-being and their health and their safety? I think that always has to be number one.
I was just wondering if you had any plans to change that level of transparency.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt. In fact, in my action plan for a thriving Hamilton, I'm going to, within the first 90 days, put together a task force, a diverse task force from the community to do exactly that, to come up with ways to make City Hall more transparent and more engaging of community, because that's the other thing I've heard.
Ken?
How does the city improve its relationship with First Nations and get some of these projects you're talking about and get everybody moving in the same direction?
Well, there's no doubt that there is an Indigenous strategy that the city has, and we need to be accountable to ensure that it is being embraced and followed across all departments. There are some, I think 94, if I'm not mistaken, recommendations that came from action items that came from the Truth and Reconciliation process. So all of the ones that are related to municipalities need to be addressed, and I'm absolutely committed to doing that. There were some, over 200 recommendations that came from the murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls and two-spirited people. Again, some of those relate to municipalities, and we need to make sure that we are taking those calls to action seriously. And I absolutely have got a great relationship with Six Nations, with Chief Hill, as well as with the Friendship Center and the Health Center. And a big part of moving those yardsticks, as you describe, moving forward on these issues, is engaging with the Indigenous leaders and communities, because it's their voice and it's their priorities that we need to respect. And they should have the leading role in that regard.
Follow-up, Ken?
No, I think I'm good for now.
Joey?
So I'm going to talk about go at questions on your 90-day plans. So I'll start first, I'll follow up on transparency. As we've discovered in the Red Hill Inquiry, there seems to be some sort of mysterious correlation of staff can't remember anything, even like 2019. The city has aggressive document destruction processes. It's the only single-tier municipality that deletes public meeting videos as soon as the stream is done. After 90 days, when can we expect, say, I think, for example, keeping records would be a thing. When will we have
As a minimum.
communication?
No, you're absolutely right, as a minimum. And it's, it's shocking when you see what's coming out in the inquiry in this day and age. I mean, there are all kinds of pieces around Information and Privacy Act, kind of regulations that other orders of government follow and are required to follow, and ours is supposed to as well. And it's just not acceptable. It's just not acceptable to do things in secret, nor is it acceptable to erase the record. Having a shredder working overtime to try to prevent information from being, available to the public only serves to increase the distrust. It only serves to create even more friction and concern about, like anything else. I'm a mom. I've walked into a room and seen my son hide something, and it's right away. It's like, what is it? What are you doing under there? Did you get a cookie? Those kinds of. But I mean, that's a silly example, but it does reflect exactly what happens. What does your gut say when those kinds of things are happening? So absolutely. But the point of engaging people is because this has become a huge issue for the community. And I don't think any solution coming from one politician, whether it's mayor or not, is going to necessarily build that trust. That trust has to be built collectively. And so that's why I've decided that a task force that is diverse and that engages community to help us, get through what that looks like, what the improvements are, is absolutely important. So I can't tell you I want this, and this, but I can tell you I want it to be done quickly, with respect, though, for people's voices and input and engagement. But it's something that is really serious, I think. It goes to our ability to be proud of ourselves as a city.
So your 90 days for transit review, you mentioned the conversion of McNabb Avenue, which was about 20 years ago.
It was.
The HSR's never updated its bus route. So right now, the Bayfront goes up McNabb as if it was one way and down James as if it was another way.
Yeah.
September of 2023 is probably the next opportunity to change routes. Are you hoping that your task force would have some changes for that fall 2023 schedule?
Actually, the action plan talks very clearly about making sure that we are building the next iteration of a transit plan that is relevant for the future. So, we've been through the 10 years, not quite yet, but almost. And there's a saying that I always hold on to, and that is, plan your work and then work your plan. That's how you achieve your goals. You plan the work, and then you work the plan. You don't leave the plan on a shelf. You don't decide, we're just not really going to bother with doing what we said we would do this time. We'll wait till next year. Those are the kinds of things that erode your ability to reach your goals. And so I'm looking forward to that plan being updated. And at this point, I don't know whether it's going to be a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan, whether it's even smart to do a 10-year plan. I'm going to be having those conversations, but absolutely, I'm looking forward to that. There's just so much that we need to do to fix our transit system and make it accessible and available to more people and welcoming.
Thanks, everyone. I think that's it.
Okay, thanks, everybody.